This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Helping you find emotional, spiritual, and physical balance. What does your future hold? It's time to find out with Psychic Suzanna.
Yes, you are right where you need to be to live, to grow, and to be better every day. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Now, you can find us at PsychicSuzanna.com. I'll be appearing all around here in town this week. New places in West Des Moines on 180th. I love that one. KFAB.com is where you find all the shows that we're going to do and have done and will do. This show is about empowering you, making the best you can be every day of your life with the knowledge we bring your way. You know, it's about being at peace with what you're doing. And I got to tell you, one of the hardest things to be at peace with is being a parent. There are so many questions. And no matter how good you do it, and your kids may think you don't do it good. There's a little bit of conflict on both sides. And you try to work with unconditional love, and sometimes they don't see it that way, and they don't see the discipline as being heartfelt. So today we're going to be talking about another chapter in our kids' life as they're graduating high school, as they're graduating college. We're talking to Dr. Brad Sachs. Yes, we have had him on before. Dr. Brad Sachs is on the KFAB.com. If you go on there, you'll find his other shows where we talked about teenagers, I believe. But today's topic is going to be emptying the nest, launching your young adult toward success and self-reliance. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sachs.
Thank you very much for having me back.
Well, it's quite an honor. You know, I had a lot of wonderful conversations about people after our last show because you seem to know what you're talking about. Give me a background of your work, would you please?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm a psychologist. I specialize in working with children and families and couples, and got 3 young adult children of my own and even a granddaughter. So I know these topics both inside and outside. Okay.
And your website is Dr. Brad Sachs. No, it's just bradsachs.com.
So, actually, either one will get you there, drbradsax.com or bradsachs.com.
So as we have our children graduating, and, you know, the market is saying it's a horrible job market, tell us how we help our children become independent and become self-sufficient.
Well, one of the things we have to remember is that the conveyor belt that brings teenagers into young adulthood takes a lot longer these days than it used to take even a generation ago. And it's important that both the young adults as well as the parents understand that. Because, you know, a generation ago, you could graduate high school with a diploma, you could get a pretty decent job in industry and have enough money to marry, to get a house, to raise children, to get a couple of cars. And those days are long gone. The amount of time, the amount of training and education necessary to get the kind of job that gives you financial self-reliance takes many, many more years than it did even just a generation, and certainly more than a generation or two ago. So we have to remember that it's a lot more of an elastic, elongated process right now to reach self-sufficiency. And sometimes teenagers, as well as parents, make themselves miserable because they're not quite there as quickly as they'd like to be.
Well, you know, one of my original thoughts is, you know, coming from a family, to me, my life are my children. Even though they don't talk to me, I still talk to them. But anyway, the family is number one. You know, there's no greater job than raising children and being there, and we make mistakes. The question is it wrong to let them come home after they graduate? Is it wrong for our children? When is it not healthy for us to be there and give our children money and give them support as they get into the world? How do we know that we're not enabling them to be weak?
Well, that's a good question, because obviously, like you were saying at the beginning, in this day and age, in this economy, as we're working our way through this recession, there's going to be plenty of young adults who have to return home, whether it's because they can't get a job that gives them self-reliance, whether they need to save money to go on to some additional education or training. The idea of children leaving home and staying out of the house once they turn 18, like I said, is much more the exception than the rule these days. On the flip side, you're right. You don't want to underwrite or subsidize them to the extent that they lose the motivation to move ahead with their own lives and become independent. But my sense is that in general, most young adults would like to become independent, and it's just a matter of finding that right formula or that right algorithm of support that enables them to get what they need so that they can take another launch forward towards self-reliance.
I have a couple of friends who have a son who's 20 and a son who's 22 living with her, not paying any rent. Now, that can't be healthy, can it?
Well, I do think if there's going to be a young adult returning home and the young adult is, healthy and capable, there should be some expectations placed on him or her. And whether it's you're going to contribute financially through paying rent or taking care of the groceries, whether you're going to contribute in some sort of other way, such as handling certain responsibilities and chores, it should not be a free ride because, if life is a little too comfortable, that does diminish our motivation to take the risk of moving ahead and moving forward. Some of these arrangements that I've seen with families with young adults living there in their 20s, and the cell phone is paid for, and the car insurance is paid for, and the food is paid for. I'm tempted to sign up for these arrangements myself because they're so appealing.
Would we all want to set up for someone to take care of us? So how would you launch your young adult into adulthood, and how would you help them if they move back home? What would you do?
Well, it's one of the things that has to be done is sometimes what I tell parents is that they have to heat the water up a little bit and make it a little bit less comfortable at home. And that means raising the expectation level and not doing anything that's going to sort of indulge or subsidize or make it too easy for the young adult. On the flip side, there are plenty of young adults, like I said, who are returning home for legitimate reasons and really with a very good plan in mind. And the question is, what kind of reasonable arrangement or what kind of reciprocity can we build in that makes it a livable situation so that neither generation feels too resentful? And those are things like, paying some rent or contributing in some sort of emotional, financial, or responsibility way that helps the parents not feel taken advantage of and that gives the young adult a sense of self-worth and self-respect.
One of the things that I've noticed is, I would say always charge your children rent if they're working. Because if they don't pay you, the money's going to go to something that it doesn't need to go to.
Right.
And reality is, so I would even say $200 a month and bank it for them and give it to them when they buy a house. But what do you think about the child who comes home after he's graduated and married and wants to buy a house, so he wants to save his money? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing?
Again, it depends on the relationship. It depends on what the likelihood is. I still think if you're living at home that there really should be some expectations placed on you. Perhaps, though, they don't have to be financial expectations. If the young adult is returning home because they want to save enough money to go to graduate school so that they can get a degree that's going to give them self-reliance, we might want to let them off the hook, but that doesn't mean that they don't live there with some respect for our rules, that they don't in some ways contribute in other meaningful ways to the household functioning. So I don't think it always has to be fiscal, but there has to be some understanding that, you're an adult now and we're not here just to indulge you or cater to you or make sure that all of your needs are met.
Okay, we're going to take a little break, Dr. Sachs. We'll be right back with you. You're going to tell me if the adult who moves back home, we should be doing his laundering and cooking his food. We'll be right back with Dr. Sachs. He has written the book, Emptying the Nest, How to Launch Your Children, Your Young Adults Towards Success and Self-Reliance. This is 1110 KFAB, Life with Psychic Suzanna. You need to stay here. We'll grow together.
Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB.
Yes, you are right where you need to be. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on KFAB. By the way, are you our friend at Life with Psychic Suzanna on Facebook? If not, why not? You get an inside glimpse of who's coming on air. Also, join me on Susanna Stickney on Facebook, because I like to give you where I'm at every day, but I also like to give you my intention, and what my intention the other day when it was all about peace the other day. Today is all about living in the moment, having joy. I went to, we'll talk about what I did earlier today, quite exciting. But right now, we're right here with Dr. Brad Sachs. He wrote the book, Emptying the Nest, Launching Your Young Adult Toward Success and Self-Reliance. And Dr. Sachs, I love that you say it's okay for the children to come home, because I'm a big Mother Earth kind of woman. I want to take care of people. I want to take care of my children, and if they can't look to their parents for support, where can they? So how do I know when I'm over-supporting or becoming a smotherer rather than a motherer?
Well, the basic indication is what kind of movement forward are you seeing in your young adult child? I mean, if you are seeing signs that he or she is taking care of business, A, by contributing in meaningful ways to the household, and B, by laying the groundwork for another foray or launch towards independence, then that tells you that the basic equilibrium or the basic formula that you have in place is working. But if you're starting to see signs that those steps forward are not being taken, or your inner instinct is telling you that you're starting to feel resentful, exploited, taken advantage of, then it's time to have an adult conversation with this young adult child and say, I was happy to welcome you home, but it doesn't appear like you're thriving. It doesn't appear like the conditions here are optimal for your growth, and maybe we better take another look at this and reevaluate and revisit this current arrangement.
Is it okay to give them a deadline, like, say, 2 months? You either start paying a couple hundred rent or you find yourself another place?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at a certain point, I don't advocate any kind of,
I like the money thing. I'm a shopper, Doc. Let me go there.
Say it again?
I'm a shopper. Let me go with the money thing. I like that.
No. I mean, I think the money thing it's very appropriate. I mean, I think money is a currency that's a very meaningful one. And I do like the idea of a plan. I mean, for me, I sometimes call deadlines lifelines, because it's only when we have a deadline that we take steps forward in our life. And I think it's
wait. Can I repeat that? Deadlines are lifelines?
Yeah.
Because I love that.
I'll tell you, I don't think I would have finished any of my books if I didn't have a deadline from my publisher, and that's what kept me alive as a writer. Otherwise, we would just sort of meander through without having to do what needs to be done and pull the trigger. So, yeah, in this context, absolutely. At this particular point in time, we will expect you to be paying a certain minimum amount of rent, or, we'll have to ask you to leave. We're not crazy about this idea. We're not doing it because we don't love you or because we don't care for you. But unless we see evidence that you're thriving, we wouldn't be doing our job as parents to let you stay under these current conditions.
Okay, what if they can move back home? I'm still doing their laundry and cooking for them. Is that okay? I don't like the laundry thing. I think that's too much. But
I mean, again, it depends. Look, if your young adult has moved back home, is working 10 or 12 hours a day, and going to school part-time, and you have some time, I don't think it's a terrible thing to make a meal or to, help out, But in general, I think there should be as much independence and self-reliance expected as possible, because, like I said, that's the approximation, that's how we rehearse for real life. In real life, we usually don't have someone making our meals for us and doing our laundry for us. We have to do it ourselves.
And the question with that, and also, all right, let me go one more point about emptying the nest, because I'm a nest builder. I love my family. The other day there was a hobo and his wife with a shopping cart. I wanted to take him home. I only gave him money, and I thought about taking him home, and then my husband would have killed me. But anyway.
Right.
How do we know as a parent if we're enabling them? How do we know? Give me a signpost. I need a signpost to know I'm making healthy adults. Can I let my son with a couple kids move back home with me, with his wife, if they want to build a home?
Well, again, first of all, we have to remember a couple of things.
Yeah.
One is, Geography doesn't define self-reliance. There are plenty of young adults and adults who are living away from home who are completely dependent emotionally and financially on their parents. And there's plenty of young adults and adults who live at home with their parents who really are quite independent, both from a fiscal standpoint and also an emotional standpoint. So the issue isn't just one of location or residence, because independence, self-reliance, self-sufficiency, those things either occur or don't occur wherever we live. Now, it is legitimate, though, for a parent to say, look, you're married and you have a couple of kids. If you want to move back here while you're building your house or while you're doing what you need to do or because you've fallen on some hard times, we're willing to cobble together a temporary arrangement. But these are what the conditions are going to be. It shouldn't be seen as some moratorium on responsibility or some abdication of what needs to be done to be a functioning adult. So, one of the things I've noticed, one of the reasons I wrote the book is because, this recession hit and it changed everyone's lives. Parents no longer had the money to send their child to a 4-year residential college, and students getting out of college couldn't get jobs. So it changed the entire landscape. But nevertheless, the basic fundamental building blocks of self-regard and self-concept and self-assuredness, those remain the same wherever you live.
Okay. I must tell you, this past weekend, one of my appearances, a man and a woman came in, and the man had moved back home with his one child. The woman was trying to get pregnant, and the mother was abusive to the daughter-in-law. Now, what makes the man allow that to happen? That dumbfounded me.
So let me make sure I understand.
Yeah.
This man moved back in with his mother?
With his wife and his one child.
With his mother, and with his father is there as well, or just his mother? Yes.
Uh-huh.
And the mother is abusive to his wife, the daughter-in-law?
Verbally, yes.
Well, what did he say regarding why he puts up with that or allows that to happen?
Well, I told him to man up. I'm sorry. I just told him to man up. I said, how dare you put your mother of your child through that? But what makes a child feel that he can't be on his own, can't do things on his own? I mean, the man worked 40 hours, 50 hours a week. I mean...
Well, it's a good question. I don't know the details. I mean, if he's working full-time, it seems a little bit unlikely that he needs to be at home. And that's where things get a little complicated because, a lot of times young adults return home not because they're really laying the groundwork for a plan or kind of clearing the flight path for their eventual departure. They come home for reasons that might not be good ones. Maybe they come home because they don't have enough self-confidence in themselves to function autonomously. Maybe they come home because they feel out of loyalty, out of fidelity to their mother or father, they should come back home and take care of them or keep an eye on them. So there's a lot of psychological reasons why young adults sometimes return home too, and that's when things can sometimes get a little complicated and a little bit bewildering because no one is sure why anyone's doing what they're doing. The son may feel like he's sacrificing his own life and his own marriage to take care of his mother. And a lot of times right under the surface there are other motivations and other initiatives that prompt us to make these kinds of decisions.
We're going to take another break with you, Dr. Sachs, and we'll be right back. We are talking to Dr. Sachs, who wrote this wonderful book. Matter of fact, let me read you a review. It's from Harvard Medical School. It says, Brad Sachs has produced an excellent book that captures the obstacles, challenges, and joys of helping young adults achieve independence. This is Emptying the Nest with Dr. Brad Sachs, Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB.
Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. She knew I was going to say that.
Yes, this is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Please find us at Psychic Suzanna, where you get one free question.com or KFAB.com. Join me on Facebook. My God, I love Facebook. If it's your birthday, I get to say happy birthday. I love that. I love that. I mean, who thought of this Facebook and tweeting? I love it. I love it. We're coming back with Dr. Sachs, who wrote the book Emptying the Nest. Dr. Sachs, I want to thank you again for being on our show. You are a fountain of knowledge, and I really appreciate it. Last time we talked about the good enough teen, and we might talk about the good enough child next time. I enjoy having you on. Tell us how we can get a hold of you, where we can find the book, and if you could give me three rules that I can tell that I'm not a bad mother.
Well, you can reach me. Easiest way is through my website, and it's drbradSachs.com, drbradSachs.com. And that's probably the simplest way. You can email me through the site, and it has information about the books. And you can order all the books through the site, through any of the online booksellers. And most of the big chain bookstores will carry them as well. So libraries have them. They're not too hard to get a hold of.
They're not too hard, and your website is quite informative. Okay, three things to know that I'm empowering my child to be self-reliant. What do you think?
Well, one of the things that I tell parents that's very important to do at any stage of development, but certainly at this stage, is the importance of having more faith in your child than your child has in him or herself.
Oh.
Because life is tough, and particularly as you're crossing the threshold into the cold, heartless, hostile world, a lot of times it's easy for a young adult to lose faith and experience a great amount of self-doubt, doubt that interferes with their capacity to summon their strengths and, capitalize on their abilities and overcome their weaknesses. And they turn to us, even as young adults, for that kind of belief, that kind of faith. And so when we have more faith in our children than they have in themselves, they sort of soak it up and they absorb it, they internalize
Wonderful.
it.
Yeah.
And that tends to become the fuel for their own development. So that would be one thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to do is to make it clear that they are going to be loved and accepted simply for being who they are rather than who we wish them to be. One of the things that keeps young adults tethered sometimes and keeps them from taking the risks of moving on with their lives is they constantly feel like they're not going to be good enough, which is why I wrote a couple of those good enough books.
Oh, my God, we're out of time. We're going to have to call you back so we can find out more how to be the better parent. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with you. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Now, you can always find us at PsychicSuzanna.com, or you can go to KFAB.com and have all of the shows you're listening to up online. Also, please join us on Facebook, Life with Psychic Suzanna, and then you'll get to know who's on the air. You'll know about this person we're going to be interviewing right now, and Psychic Suzanna Stickney on the air. We're going to be interviewing an author that has, for 3 decades, been involved in the media. She's been a writer and consultant. She's worked with Walter Cronkite. That's got to have stories on its own. Mm-hmm. She's done some CBS News, NBC News. She's done USA Today, The Television Show, The Week with David Brinkley, Larry King Live, Hardball with Chris Matthews. And then she writes a book.
Yeah, I'm 100 years old.
Yeah, well, the whole thought about this is, and I'm talking to Carol Ross Joynt, the whole thought of this, Carol, is you've written a book called The Innocent Spouse. Yeah. And the reason I gave all those titles for you is because you're not a dummy.
Well, you can be called an innocent spouse by the IRS, but you can still be ignorant. And I was ignorant. I was very ignorant about our personal finances. I was very smart in my work, but I was very happy to be married to a man who did all the bookkeeping and banking for our family. I mean, I had my own credit cards and I had my own bank account, but I let him handle the overall financing of our lives.
And I can imagine doing what you did. I mean, with all the work you were doing, it was probably just easier for you.
Well,
not to have to deal with it.
I wasn't good at it.
Yeah.
Even before I'd married Howard, when I was on my own, I still let my father do my finances because it just wasn't an area that I was comfortable with.
And so you're telling us women that we need to be alerted to what the house finances are. Tell me your story.
Well, it begins with my husband's sudden death from pneumonia when he owned this bar, Nathan's, and I was a producer for Larry King. I found out 2 weeks after he died that he'd been under investigation for federal tax fraud. When I went to meet with the lawyers, they said that since I was his sole heir, I was now the defendant, which shocked me. It shocked me that I could be the defendant, but it shocked me that he was under investigation for fraud. I knew he'd been audited, but he owned a small business, and it seemed to me he was always being audited, so that didn't strike me in any remarkable way. But here I was now in the lawyers' offices being told not only I was the defendant, but that they were looking for $3 million in back debts.
Wow.
They said, we recommend you sell everything, pay the IRS, and get on with your life. I said, first of all, I didn't do this. I didn't have anything to do with it. But more than that, I could sell every single thing we have, and I would not be able to pay them this money. We don't have that kind of money. We lived well. We had what people call an upper middle class life, but we didn't have big money. I couldn't just write a check for $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So I fired those lawyers, and I hired lawyers
Very
to
good.
engage in my innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And they worked for a year. They worked on my defense, and the IRS, recognized I was innocent and granted me the Innocent Spouse Code, or awarded it to me, as it's called.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed us to have something. They still got a lot. They still got everything that was in Howard's name, but I got to keep what was in my name, and I got to keep our house. But I also got the business, not realizing at the time that it was basically a house of cards.
Right.
So I had to try to run this bar I had to run a bar for 11 years, and that was hard.
Yeah, owning a business is hard anyway. So tell me, what would you tell the women? What would you tell people out there about how to
not be me?
Well, how not to be head over heels in debt and not know it.
Well, first of all, because that's a good question, because it's okay to be head over heels in love,
mm-hmm.
but don't be an idiot about your personal finances. Trust but verify. Be sure you know who you think you know.
Trust but verify. I love that.
Verify. Become fluent in your personal finances. Talk to whether it's your husband or wife, whoever's running the books in your household. Tell them you want a roadmap. You want to know just how your family finances work. And you also kind of want to have a policy as, if we're in trouble, tell me about it so that we can work it out. And if you're about to get married or go into a legal partnership, don't be afraid of a prenup. They're not just for rich people and movie stars. They
mm-hmm.
really exist for a reason, and they can protect you and maybe make your marriage stronger. And if you do find yourself in the crosshairs of the IRS, get a lawyer, because the IRS and lawyers talk better to each other than we talk to the IRS. The IRS can be intimidating. A lawyer's going to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
And at every income level, you can find a lawyer. And if you don't have any money, you can probably find a big firm, where they do pro bono work, who will represent you.
I think the thing that really shocks me and stuns me and is interesting about your book is being the innocent spouse. I'm sure Howard never in the world wanted to give you these issues.
No.
Howard,
he'd known. If he'd had a disease and he knew he was terminal,
right,
he would have talked to me about all of it, ultimately.
Right.
I think, and with all due respect to men, because I love them dearly, just as they don't want to ask for directions,
right,
they also think they're always going to work it out. And when they have a lot of balls in the air, financially, they think they're going to work it out.
And they probably feel they're immortal.
Yes.
Yes, most men feel they're immortal.
Well, who wants to come home from work and say, I haven't been paying taxes?
Yeah, you're right.
Maybe you always think you're going to do it, but it doesn't seem like the right time or the right day. But I don't mean it as a dark question, but do you really know the person you're married to?
Well, again, I think Howard is also an innocent spouse because he really, I'm sure, wanted to protect you. And
he did want to protect us. He was very used to his father's money, and then his father died, and he lost that safety net.
Yeah,
and he had an inheritance, but it wasn't big enough to subsidize the business, and his father had been subsidizing the business, and when that subsidy was gone, Howard was on his own, and he lost his way.
Okay, you're talking now to the Midwest, okay?
Yeah.
So we're young, we're innocent over here. We don't probably go to Georgetown too much.
Right, but you probably go
But we've heard of Nathan's. We heard of Nathan's. Mm-hmm. Now, you made Georgetown a Q&A cafe. What is that?
I created, there I was in a bar, not ever having worked in one. My career was entirely in journalism and television. And after the September 11 terrorist attacks, I decided to create a talk show in the bar, probably the only talk show in a bar.
How wonderful.
And once a week during lunch, I'd bring in some kind of notable guest. Washington's full of them. And it's full of itself, but it's also full of notable people. Mm-hmm. And I would interview them during lunch. And it was shot on camera for cable TV. And it gave me something to do within this business, something to do that I understood within this business that I didn't understand. So it was great fun for me. So I created the Q&A Cafe almost 10 years ago, and when Nathan's closed, I moved it to a hotel in Georgetown where I still do it now once a month.
Wonderful, wonderful.
It is.
You also have a website, which is, can you tell us about it?
I have CarolJoynt.com, and it's Joynt. CarolJoynt.com, and then there's a website, InnocentSpouseBook.com, and I'm also on Facebook.
Well, you know what?
And I love hearing from people.
And you know what I looked up last night is the New York Social Diary.
Social Diary.
You know, that's rather fun.
It is fun. I love my editors because they kind of let me write about whatever I want to, social or not. So one week I might be writing about a party, but the next I might be writing about this fellow Dominique Strauss-Kahn who's in all that trouble up in New York. And next week I'm going to write about a fabulous new burger place that just opened up here.
Wonderful.
Because I love a good burger, and I know you know about burgers in the Midwest because that's where the meat comes from.
That's where the meat comes from. The Midwest is where life begins as far as...
It's beautiful out there.
Thank you.
I loved driving through the Midwest when my son and I did a cross-country road trip. It was just spectacular.
There are miles you can go without seeing cement, but what you're on.
And it was so important for me to show him that because he's grown up in a city.
Right.
And I said, you've got to see what America looks like.
And what a blessing that you did that for him. So is there any last words you want to leave with us on this subject?
Well, two last words. One, if you're in a bind, you can get through it. My book has a happy ending, and you'll see that. And go to your local bookstore and buy Innocent Spouse. And if they don't have it, please ask them to get it. But on my website, there are links to all the mail-order booksellers.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. You have been a true pleasure.
Well, Susanna, it's been great talking to you.
I am talking to author Carol Ross Joynt, who is the author of Innocent Spouse. You check her out. We're going to be right back. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. By the way, Jim wants me to remind you, we're waiting for your calls. The number is 558-1110, 1-800-543-1110. We're going to now talk about your future and how you can make it work for you. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna, 1110 KFAB, the only place you want to be.
This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB.
Yes, you are right where you need to be. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Now, you can always find us at PsychicSuzanna.com, where you see that I'm going to be around town this week. Actually, I'm going to a new bar called Lit on 160th in West Omaha. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. We're also at KFAB.com. Monday, by the way, I'm in Council Bluffs. How cool is that? But anyway, You go to the Psychic Suzanna, you find the schedule. Also, join me at Suzanna Stickney on Facebook. That's where you get the daily things that I'm doing. I try to empower you every day by telling you what I'm trying to work on in me. We're all working to be better. We're all striving to get through this day the best we can. And let my thoughts come with your thoughts, and maybe we can bring peace to the world. Let my thoughts become your thoughts, and we can forgive our past. And we can forgive ourselves for what we've done wrong.